Hi, I'm Luann Worley with Rockin Book Reviews, and I'm so excited today to have Heidi Tucker here with me. Heidi won the 2018 Illumination Book Award for Survey Song, and she also won the 2017 Illumination Book Award for her first inspirational book, Finding Hope in the Journey. Her passion for writing and speaking about light and hope has inspired thousands. Heidi is known as a great storyteller who believes that every story not only teaches the gospel principle, but can make you feel it. She has inspired many to rise up, cling to their faith, and position their hearts to recognize God's hands in their life. Heidi Tucker was born and raised in the beautiful desert of Arizona, where I was raised part of my life.
Oh, great.
In Mesa. And following her graduation from Arizona State University, she raised her family and found a strong connection teaching, working, and serving with teenagers. When Heidi isn't writing her next book or speaking at a conference, you'll find her spending time outdoors with her husband, 4 grown children, and 8 grandchildren. She loves sunflowers, hiking, and ice cream. Not necessarily in that order, though.
Right.
Like I said, I grew up in Mesa. I loved it. But back then, I was in a small farm community.
Hey, it's all sunshine and sunshine and happiness in Arizona.
So tell me a little bit about your the activities and things you enjoyed while living there.
Oh, growing up in
Arizona,
I have wonderful memories, running through the desert. We just played outside all the time, year round. There's no snow days. We never owned a snow shovel. So loved it. We did a lot of water skiing, a lot of water sports, which is obvious with the heat. The great thing about the Phoenix, Arizona area is you're 4 hours from the beaches in Mexico. We used to go to Rocky Point, Mexico all the time, several times a year. And you're 8 hours from San Diego. So there is a way to cool off. It's either your backyard pool or a trip to the beach. So it was just wonderful. We really loved, I loved growing up in Arizona. I still love it. And I love to be warm. I still crave the warmth, I think, from being raised there.
I think what I was impressed most about it is I was in the Maricopa County school system.
Yes.
And I have been in 2 other states and went to school, and never have I found a school system that equals Maricopa County.
Oh, really? Good.
So
You must have had some great teachers.
Yeah, I think the education system there is great. Okay, reflect on the special memories that has had a special impact in your life.
No, a couple of great memories I have. Number one is my mom. She was so charitable, and she just has a service heart, and she was always caring for others, taking meals to people and taking care of children, or dropping off goodies. And she would I was the oldest of 6. I am the oldest of 6 children. She took us with her. So I remember many journeys with her. And so that made a real impact on me, that there's life outside of our little family, that there are some that have needs and that we can help. So I learned sort of to have a charitable heart from my mom. And another memory is long walks with my dad. He would come home from work, and many times, often I would go walking with him, and we would discuss life. He's a magical storyteller. I learned storytelling from him. He taught me about myself. He taught me what was important in life. And on all those long desert walks, that's a real memory for me. And now I still get out and walk. Every day I'm out walking or hiking. And I learned that from an early age with my dad. So it was
really early in the morning.
Early in the morning, depending on the time of year. See, in winter there's no snow, so you can go anytime you want. But 6 months of the year, you better set your alarm clock and get up early.
Well, I always hated the heat, and I lived in Arizona for 10 years, and then we moved to Las Vegas, so it didn't help. So, and I raised my family in Las Vegas for 32 years. So.
Oh, windy Las Vegas.
I know, I thought I just can't escape, but I'm now in the cool hills of Utah. So.
There you go. There you go.
But anyhow, you've always been a storyteller. From what age did this begin, and what type of stories did you tell?
I've been telling stories. I've been telling true stories my entire adult life. I quickly learned whether it was teaching a class or trying to make a point with my kids or with youth or teenagers, that the best way to teach a principle is to tell a story, because that helps them feel it. And I've always just been really inspired by true stories. I can read, something that's fiction, and it feels good, and that's great. But when I read a true story, it sticks with me, and I ponder it. And I sort of learn from it. And so I use that in my own life. I've done that my whole life.
That's wise. I was thinking often, I swore I wouldn't be a lecturer like my mother, and what did I do? I was a lecturer like my mother.
Right. Well, we all are a little bit, aren't we?
And I was thinking, if people are wise, they would be, because Christ set the example that you teach with parables, and
right.
So that's
right.
very wise. I think you're very wise to do that. Who encouraged you to continue telling these stories, so that you lose interest? So you don't use the interest. Like so many times you set goals for yourself,
right?
And all of a sudden, pretty soon they don't seem as important, and you just kind of lose interest. What kept your interest going?
Yeah, that's kind of twofold. Number one, it was a really sort of a spiritual feeling that I had to write and to tell my stories, and to put that out there to help inspire others. And so I cling to that. I feel like it's kind of a calling that I've been asked to do. And so that's, in a spiritual sense, it's important to me, but emotionally, it's hard to put that out there. I feel like I've published my journal because it's so true to me. It's so dear and close to my heart. And so as an author, that was a whole nother level of difficulty. I find great inspiration from my kids. My kids are always, my 4 adult children are always the first readers. And so they would read it and they would say, "You've got something here, Mom. You've got to keep doing this." And you hit a lot of dead ends, a lot of closed doors when you're trying to publish and when you're trying to market yourself. And so, I call it the little gremlins. They get in your head and they tell you don't matter. They tell you what you have to say doesn't matter. Who wants to read that? So I just trusted that my kids and my very early readers, who are a very close group of friends who will speak the truth to me, that when they said, "You need to go, you need to keep doing this," I listened and held to that. So my own conviction in my heart, which said, "You need to do this, this is a mission that you're on," combined with this close group of people, my children and my close friends, who said, "You can do this, push through, you can do this. What you have to say is important." I just cling to both of those things to try to get past the negativity that beats me up inside, because we all beat ourselves up, right? And it's tough. You get a lot of that self-doubt, and that can be hard to overcome.
Isn't it wonderful how children can be such a support?
Yeah.
It's my children, the reason I started my blog. They said, "Mom, you read so much. Why don't you start a review blog?"
Right. Sometimes others who are close to us can see a gift that we have to offer that we don't necessarily see in ourselves. And so if we can trust that they are, what they're saying is important.
Well, another thing I discovered, and I was a bookworm all my life, and I was reading, when my children told me this, I was reading on the average of about 6 to 8 books a week. And,
Yeah.
and I never reviewed. I never realized that reviews were important to authors. You know, I'd tell everybody about the book and how wonderful it was or whatever, but I never reviewed. And
Right.
I think it's important. One of the reasons I decided to start this blog is because I want others to realize it is important when you read a book and you enjoy it, review it.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes a difference. I mean, we really, really appreciate that as authors to see those reviews.
It's almost a lifeline, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
You're
It
writing.
is. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. You're a teacher and leader of youth. In what capacity and how early did you start?
I have been involved with youth and teenagers for 30 years. I'm just always, I mean, I've been involved in youth groups at church. I've been leaders in both local and regional levels within the LDS church. That would be stake and ward, you know, young women presidents and those kinds of things, you know, outside of the LDS faith. It's just a volunteer position where I'm putting myself in a position to lead youth to volunteer and to really learn about themselves and to learn about their own spirituality. I love it because I feel like teenagers are sponges. They're just soaking up everything, trying to figure out who they are, trying to really understand their identity, you know, and because they're being pulled on in so many directions from society and social media. And I love watching that transformation up close and to see that they're getting it, you know. And if you can teach a teenager to serve outside of themselves, because, you know, many teenagers, they enter that phase of life where their world is, you know, this. It's just all about me, right? Teach them that the world is bigger than they are, where they fit in that, and how they can make a difference. That's huge. That can be a life-changing experience. And so I love to be close and involved in that.
They're so full of life and energy.
Yeah, and they're the future. They're the future of the world, and so they are the future leaders.
And I think once they discover who they are, I think they're going to be fantastic leaders.
Yeah, I do too. I've seen incredible youth. So it's an honor to serve with them, really.
I feel the same way. Okay, in 2017, your first book, Finding Hope in the Journey, won the Illumination Award. And in the next year, Survey Song did. Tell us a little bit about Finding Hope in the Journey. What was it about?
Finding Hope in the Journey is a book about how we can do hard things if we just learn to listen and to recognize messages of hope that are from God. They're very specific to each of us. They're very small. They're quiet. They're easily missed because when we're in the midst of a struggle or a really tough trial in our life, whether that's physical or emotional or spiritual, we put on our blinders, right? We just put those blinders on and we put our heads down and we trudge down the trail and just get me through this, right? We just look at our feet and we walk and we take down this trail. And the book is about different ways that we can lift our heads and our eyes and position our hearts to open up and recognize we are not alone on this trail. There are all kinds of little nuggets out there.
And I think that's a message we all need this day and age.
That are whispering, you know, you're not alone in this. And most importantly, you know, that God is aware of what's in your life. And it can make all the difference in the world. One of the sayings I love to think about is that God won't move the mountain, but he'll help you climb it. Most often, he won't move the mountain. We just have to climb it. There are different mountains in our life. And so I use that as a metaphor. I use hiking as a metaphor in that book about the different trails that were required to hike. And some are easy and some are moderate and some were down on our knees. And so the book is about different patterns to adopt so that we can open up our hearts and see those very specific messages to us of hope. for the future. It broadens our perspective. We get a kind of a more long-range, eternal perspective if we can find those messages of hope. And it really makes all the difference. It really does.
And I like that one reference you made in Survey's song about Elder Nelson, a leader in the LDS Church, how he thought he would take away, if he was God, he might take away some of these challenges. And then he thought
Right.
about it and decided, no. We wouldn't learn, we wouldn't grow if we didn't. Right.
To have that shaping opportunity to shape our character and form, who we are. And you always come out the other end, you go through this really hard time, you come out the other end with a new gift every time, a new strength, a new gift to help others that forms you. In the midst of it, in the middle of that, it's no fun. And say, uncle, right? I want out. This is too hard. But really, when you look back with perspective, you say, no, I needed that. I like who I am now because of that.
Yeah. It's helpful too to know this life isn't it.
Right.
For many people, they feel like this is the end. When we die, we die.
Right.
But for many of us Christians, we've found that this is just a portion of eternity. It's
right. We're on a field trip, right, to learn things, and that's what we're doing.
Okay, tell us a little bit about.
We're learning.
Tell us about Survey Song. That it was an amazing story. I was really touched by it.
Yeah, wonderful Survey. I met her at church, and I knew her name, and I knew she was from Zimbabwe. That's all I knew about her. And I was in the middle of doing some pretty heavy promotion for Finding Hope in the Journey at the time. And she approached me one day and said, Heidi, I really need to talk to you. There's a question that I have to ask you. And I said, what can I do? I kind of pulled her aside and said, what can I do for you, Survey? And she said, could you come to my home? And so I did that. I said, sure, I can see you. And so we scheduled a time for later that week. And I was driving to her home, and truthfully, I was not in a good frame of mind. I had been gone for the holidays, and so I was way behind in life. I was behind in my church obligations. I was behind in my marketing, my work, everything. So I was driving there, and I thought, I don't have time for this. I don't have time to, I wonder what she wants to ask me. Why couldn't she just call me on the phone? Am I driving to her home? Her home is about 30 minutes from mine. And so I recognized that my heart was not right. And partway to her home, I pulled off to the side of the road, and I said a quick prayer, and I said, I'm sorry for being a brat. I'm just a brat. And I want to help this woman. Please help me help this woman in whatever it is that she needs. And so I put the car in drive, and I drove up to her home, and she welcomed me in with her big smile, and I sat down at the table, and we didn't know each other and very well. We talked about the weather, and we talked about a couple of world events. And finally, I looked at her and said, Survey, what can I do to help you? And I really, truly wanted to help her. And I had no idea what she needed. And she started to tell me a story about how she knew that she needed to write her story. She said, God has told me that I need to write my story. And she said, nobody knows the full extent of my story. There are things that nobody knows, and it's been really difficult. But I'm not educated. I cannot write my story. So I'm saying to myself, how do I write my story when I'm unable to do that? How do I do what God has asked me to do? But I've been praying and fasting about that for weeks. And before Christmas, you stood up in church and you read a poem for Christmas. And she said to me, I want you to know that there was a light on your head that nobody else saw except me. And she said, I knew that was God telling me You need to ask her. And so, you know, all of a sudden I realized why I'm there. I did not see that coming. And so we were both just really quiet. I was just trying to think, what am I doing? You know, what am I going to do? My head is screaming, don't do this. I had just written a book. I know how hard it is to write a book. It consumes you for a year. It was, and I thought, my head is saying, don't do this, don't do this. You don't even know the story, right? I didn't even know her story at that point. But my heart was pounding, yes, this is what you're supposed to do. You need to help this woman. And so after a couple minutes of dead silence, I looked at her and I said, Survey, if you're asking me to write your story because God has told you that I'm supposed to write your story, the answer is yes. And, you know, then we both cried, I think for very different reasons. And, you know, I left, and as I was leaving, I said, you know, Survey, did you ask me to write your story because you read my first book and you knew that I had published a book? And she said, stopped, and her eyes got wide, and she looked at me and said, you wrote a book? And she had no idea that I could even put a sentence together, right? She did not know anything about me. So I pulled that thought, and I ran out to my car and I got a copy of my first book. I brought it into the house and I said, I'd like you to read this, you know, as much as you can, just sort of skim through it. And I want you to be comfortable with what I write and how I write, so that you know that I'm the one to help you. And she, you know, looked at the book for a second and she shook her head and she said, Heidi, I will look at your book, but I don't need to know from your book because God has already told me. I just thought, wow, you know, the faith of this woman is just incredible, just amazing. And so that's how that started. I mean, I didn't find Survey, she found me. And so then the, you know, the interview process began, and that was a long, very emotional, very difficult in some ways, you know, it's a difficult journey for me to take with her because I needed to feel her story to be able to write it. Mm-hmm. And so there were days and days and days of just sitting my recorder on the table and talk. And at first she wanted it to just be the surface. These are the facts. You know, and I said, no, we got to go deeper. We got to go deeper than that. I need to feel this. I can't write from my head. I have to write from my heart. And so that was a process because we needed to do this little dance of learning to get to know each other. She needed to trust me. We needed to love each other and to really go to some dark places in her life where we could be there together. And so,
and the reader can feel it in the book.
Rewarding experiences of my life, and we are lifelong sisters now, you know. So yeah, it's incredible.
That kind of gives me goosebumps because my friend had a similar situation when we were talking about spiritual things, and I took her to regional assembly thing, and the LDS prophet came into the room, and she said, do you see that? I said, what? That glow, that light around his head, you know. And so it was a similar situation. She could see it,
right,
but she was in tune. I couldn't see it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, it's different for each of us at different times, which is important that we recognize how it works for each of us.
And I'm amazed at your faith in her faith.
You know, that's what I had to cling to when I during the difficult times of writing the book, and it wasn't coming together, and it was hard, and it was taxing, and it pulls me away from my life and my husband and my kids. You know, when I write, I go into what I call my writing cave, which I have to sort of shut the world out a little bit. And I had to cling to that moment in her home where she spoke out, you know, and said, this is what I saw. This is what I know. I'm asking you to help me. And the feeling that I had in my heart and my soul, I had to hold on to that to get through those hard times.
And I have to say, you very smoothly put in your own thoughts into her story at times.
Mm-hmm.
And so often when writers do that, you kind of lose the moment. But you just
Right.
very smoothly did it so that it just added to the story.
Thank you. Thank you. She wanted her story to be told, but she also wanted to teach. She asked me to help her do that, to teach from her life example. Yeah.
Well, I think that was effectively accomplished.
Thank you.
Okay. You do a lot of speaking and a lot of personal interviews. I mean, not the interviews, but personal, what am I trying to say? Anyhow, you do a lot of speaking assignments and conventions and so forth.
Yeah.
How do you accomplish this in your busy schedule?
Yeah, it's tricky. You know, I've got a great family that supports me in this. And because you never know when I'm going to take off and go speak somewhere. And, you know, I've got a great husband who, when I say Friday night, I'm, you know, doing a fireside or I'm doing a talk over here. And so, you know, see you at 10 o'clock. There's no date night for us. So I've got incredible support to be able to do that. My family knows how passionate I am about sort of sharing my message and helping others through it. So it's a wonderful opportunity.
Do you do video conferencing like we are doing with
video conferencing with different groups and even book clubs. I love to go to book clubs and talk more specifically about the book. I'm going to be on Good for Utah, you know, coming up here in the next month. I'll be on there. They'll be interviewing me on their show. And so there's just a variety of different things, conferences. It's just a privilege to share my message. But really what gives me sort of the energy to do that is feedback from viewers and from readers. I've gotten some heartfelt emails from readers that say, you know, something you said, that you said in this chapter completely changed my life. I look at things differently now. And I just think, you know, wow, I had no idea. I'm just sort of spilling my heart onto paper. And to hear back that it's making a difference to so many people all over the world. I've received emails from several countries all over the world. And it's just, that's amazing. That's what keeps me going.
So do you have schedule other people can look online and see if you're going to be in their area?
Yes. On my blog, which is thepickledsunflower.com.
Sunflower.com?
Yeah, thepickledsunflower.com.
Thepickledsunflower.com.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the pickled sunflower. Yeah, that has, there's a list on there of events that I'm going to be speaking at, so they can check to see if I'm in their area. They can certainly contact me to see if I'll come speak. That's something that they're involved with. So that's always a great opportunity for me. But
sounds like you travel quite a bit.
So I do. I travel quite a bit. I stay mostly West Coast. I've got a few things that are coming up maybe for East Coast, but I'm back and forth between Arizona and Utah every month doing a variety of things. So, and then I've gone to California, I've gone to Oregon, and I've got some other things brewing over on the east side of the United States. So yeah, it's a wonderful opportunity. But feedback really, you know, sometimes I'm driving, you know, an hour or two away and I'm going to speak at a conference and I think, why am I doing this? You know, I'm spending my own gas money. I mean, I'm doing this out of the, you know, I just want to help people and do this. So, but it's costing me some money and some time. And
so you're not being paid?
Not being paid, no. And so I think, why am I doing this? I'm just taking all this time, but one person to approach me after I've talked to a group that says, you know, you said exactly what I needed to hear tonight, you know, and the drive home is much more positive for me. I think, okay, that's why I did that. That's why I was.
As you reached out and touched that one.
Yeah, I just, you know, as long as I can keep touching one person. Yeah.
Okay, before we sign off, what big projects have you got in the making?
Well, I hope to be able to speak to larger and larger groups. I'm working on that. I have a couple of book outlines in mind, 2 or 3 that are in the works. And so certainly in the next few years, I'll have at least 3 more books out. And they will all be nonfiction. I found my niche. I want to keep telling true stories because they just mean so much to me, and they can teach us so much. I just love that genre, and I don't see it yet. I don't see a reason to leave that. That's kind of where my passion is.
So will they be similar to Survey Song then?
Yes, I've been approached by several people. They'll approach me and say, wow, I read Survey's song and her story is incredible. I want to tell you mine.
Super.
Yeah, so I've got a few of those that I'm looking into, as well as some others that are just sort of from me teaching. But yeah, they're not written yet. I'm looking at starting. I'm getting the bug to begin writing again. I've been doing some heavy marketing and promotional activities for Service Song, but I'm ready to get back to the computer and just sit down and write. So I need to get started.
Sounds like you found your mission in life here.
Yeah, I know. I'll keep doing it as long as I really feel it. As long as my heart says, you're doing the right thing, this is what you need to be doing, I'll keep doing it.
I think it's inspiring or comforting for others to know that you're not alone, that others are suffering too. You look at people's lives and think, oh, they have everything going for them. And
right.
So many times that person's life is really having, difficult times, but they just,
right.
nobody knows
right.
about it. And I think that's one thing that's helped me. I've had a lot of health problems through the last several years. And at one time I thought, God, why? I'm trying to do everything right.
Yeah.
And I have all these children and responsibilities. I had 8 children. And why? But
right.
Then through the years, I found that I am able to empathize and understand other people who are having problems that they can't control.
Right.
And I've never really verbally judged people, but I have in my mind.
Sure.
And it's kept me from judging people within my mind.
Yes.
Because I understand there's so much in life you can't control. So I think it's important that these books and other people's lives, I think it's wonderful that they'll share that part of their life that's really personal and that others can be comforted by them.
Yeah. Life is a lot more than just the perfectly manicured photo of the family all dressed in their Sunday best, right? Beautifully for the camera. And that's a great moment, but there's so much that we can learn from and be real about behind the scenes of that photo, right?
My eldest daughter, several times in high school, was approached by people. You just don't understand. You have the perfect life. She was the eldest, and she had to take care a lot of when I was in bed, ill and in the hospital. And, she, we had so many medical bills on that. So we went to what they call the Value Center, which is a used clothing store. But she knew her brand names, and she would pick out brand names. And everybody said, you have so much money, and you have all these nice clothes and stuff. And she'd just say, oh, you don't even know what you're talking about.
We don't know. No, we can't judge each other. That's the harshest thing we can do, is judge each other. We're all in this together, just trying our best to get through our own struggles, and we need to be supportive of each other. And if you don't know what's going on in someone's life, you can just assume there is something. There's something. Yeah.
And there's so much hate in the world today, and we need more positive. We need more uplifting books.
Yeah. We need to be helping each other find hope.
Is there any final words you'd like to say before we close?
I don't think so. Just that maybe that we can do hard things. We are each stronger than we know we are. And there's different ways to sort of find that. And maybe it's someone else that will tell you, maybe it's a spiritual thing for you that you can rely on. But we have a lot of strength within us to do things that seem very, very difficult or impossible. And for me, I never dreamed I'd be writing a book. That was not on a bucket list. I'm a business major from Arizona State University. I am not an English major. I'm not a lit, and so you never know what life's going to deal you. And we can do hard things. And often we are blessed because of that. If we trudge through and hold on cling to our faith with everything, we have the ability to do something that's really hard and to make a difference in a very individual way. The way that you are going to make a difference is different than the way I'm going to make a difference. And that's where judging comes into play. We don't want to judge each other because we're making a difference in a different way. It's unique to each of us based on life experience and gifts that we each have. And so, yeah, find your niche, find what makes you unique, find a way that you can make a difference in one person's life. And that's what it's all about.
Okay, and we want to encourage everyone to explore the universe, whether fact or fiction, through reading. And bye for now.